Washington versus Nebraska, December 30th. Marco, who do you like and why?
Well, I like Washington, and this is a case of pure motivation and revenge. We talk about motivation in bowls, and for Nebraska, if you're the Nebraska Cornhuskers, you're leaving the Big 12. You played the Big 12 championship game. They were a field goal away from winning that game. They blew a 17-0 lead to end up, instead of in a BCS bowl, to come to the Holiday Bowl against a team you already, blew out earlier in the year. I just don't see where Nebraska finds motivation.
And as we've talked about in the bowls, motivation is more important than any other college football handicap. Regular season motivation matters, but not near as much because of the disparity in motivation. Some teams are super excited to be there, and usually that's two types of teams. One is they're in a game that's a stretch for them. Like you would expect TCU is going to be excited to be in the Rose Bowl, for example. Anyone in the BCS championship game is going to be excited, for example. Otherwise, you've got up-and-coming programs that are trending upwards that look at the bowl game, no matter which game it is, as a chance to have an extra month of practice, as a chance to establish themselves on the national stage. With Nebraska, you clearly have neither of those. Like you said, this is a game that is a drop-off for them. And additionally, they've been on the national stage.
Right. The other thing is you've got, when you look at bowl games, you look at how teams got into the bowls. Washington is a team that had to win their final 3 games just to become bowl eligible. So they're definitely got motivation. They're tested where, they're going in on momentum instead of backing in.
So they're a trending team. New, coach has been there a few years, has a vision. This is the culmination of, in a way, this is the first couple years of work. This is the reward of that.
And guaranteeing that you're going to be motivated when you're getting to play a team that, took you out behind the woodshed and beat you up on your own field earlier in the year.
Okay, so let's talk about because it's pretty rare in college football to have a second game against the same team. Occasionally you have that in the conference championship games, not often in the bowl games. When you look at the first game between these two, Nebraska won big. What else, as you go inside the box score, what else do you take away?
Well, you got to remember that game happened earlier in the season. Nebraska, definitely a physical team, great defense. They were able to manhandle a team, Washington, that I felt, as we talked about, a younger team that was finding their way. As they've progressed through the season, this is not the same Washington team that played them the first time. They're more mature. They're a younger team that grew as the season progressed. Also, Nebraska, got banged up at the end of the season, but, the quarterback Martinez, with the month off, that's definitely going to help him for, that bad ankle that he had at the end of the season.
Okay, so one, you think Washington, a youngish team, has improved significantly since the first matchup. Number two, you see the significant motivational edge going towards Washington. Now, what you said lastly seems to be pro-Nebraska, which is if you just look at the scores, those last few games of the year, Nebraska had some injury problems at QB specifically, and now from your understanding, where's he at? Where's that quarterback at?
He's going to be as close to 100% as he could be with the month off. But, he played the game. He played the Big 12 championship game even banged up. So, and they were close.
And that can be deceiving because, in theory, he was significantly less than 100%.
Correct.
Now, going back to motivation a little bit, Nebraska is leaving the Big 12. This is it. Next year, they're in the Big 10. And, I actually have some friends in the Big 12 on the football side. I don't know all the details. It got a little boring as they kept talking about it. But the fact is, Nebraska not only is in a worse bowl game than you would expect for being second, losing the Big 12 game, where they have the ability of the bowls to say, well, if you're within one win and within so many places in the BCS, there's all these conditions where it's not just the first team goes here, the second team goes here. This is the 4th or 5th Big 12 bowl, and in theory, they should have been the second. So there was a real snub to it, which I think emotionally can't, it could be, well, we're going to go out and kick butt as a big FU. I think, if anything, it's going to be let's wipe our hands of this crap and let's move on.
Right.
All right, so give us your prediction.
Well, I've got the game. I got Nebraska winning the game, but I've got Washington covering. I got it 30-21. Washington covering the lines at 14 right now, so take the Washington plus the 14.
Now, would you, because of the first level handicapper is going to say Nebraska's a bigger name, and they're going to say, wow, Nebraska killed them earlier in the year. That makes me kind of think there might be public action on Nebraska coming up to game time. Would you recommend waiting to check out and see if you can find the 14.5?
Definitely, because this thing opened at 13 and went to 14, so the trend is going to go upwards. And one of the things that I will tell you, another reason I do like Washington, the fact that Vegas did bring this out under the 2 touchdowns. And they opened it at 13, and to me, you wouldn't have thought any different of opening this game at 14 the way they thrashed them. So you know how I
You're
like
saying
to
they weren't afraid of Nebraska money, which means you think they lean towards Washington. Okay. I would agree 100%. I think that you have a much better chance of getting 14.5 than losing the 14 to 13.5 coming up till game time. Now, Vegas actually has Nebraska as one of the more underrated teams. They have Nebraska ranked as the 12th best team in the country, and the BCS has them as the 18th best team, and that 6-spot difference is pretty significant. Also, you can't undercount that Nebraska has won 4 of 5 bowl games against the spread, and this is a team that's just used to bowls. And for this Washington team, as much as they might be excited about it, a lot of this operational stuff, a lot of these details are going to be new to them, which I think is a slight negative.
It is a slight negative, but going back to Nebraska, again, they are a team that's in the bowls all the time, so they are a well-oiled machine. But when you're used to playing at better bowls, it's like, I used an analogy on a podcast they did earlier today. If somebody takes you out to dinner every holiday season and they're taking you to one of the finer restaurants here in Vegas, and then this year they say, come on, RJ, we're going to Fridays instead, you're going to be a little bit disappointed in the meal. And I think that's what you're going to have with Nebraska in this bowl game.
Well, you actually are going to be disappointed if it's the same meal every year too, right? So you got to always improve.
Well, definitely.
Or
variety.
Doesn't speak well for marriage. Think about that.
He said it, I didn't.
Think about that. All right, now it's your turn to continue the conversation in the comment section with Marco and me. And next up, we're going to be looking at Notre Dame and Miami of Florida.